Offensive lineman Patrick Mekari's value is immeasurable, and the Jaguars make a trade that kind of shows that to you. We'll discuss that more here today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is a fact, Jack. It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. Shout out to the everydayers that join us each and every day. We definitely appreciate you here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. You can find us wherever you get your podcast, whether you watch or listen. Make sure you tap into that location so you do not miss an episode of The Big Show. And if you're new here, we're going to give you a reason to come back, just like those everydayers do every single day. Here's what we're going to talk about at the end of the show. We'll get to the big outlook, GM James Gladstone. Just a quick check-in, look-see, checking of the oil. Just check your oil real quick. Make sure all of your levels are correct, and that's what we're going to do. Luke Fortner traded for Kaylin Saunders, defensive tackle for the New Orleans Saints. I'll tell you the good, the bad, and the not so significant things about that deal. We'll get right into it. First off, we're going to start, though, talking about Pat Mekari being traded, being signed this offseason from the Baltimore Ravens, and why his importance has a lot to do with what the Jaguars do moving forward on the offensive line. So real quick here, just to get to the bottom line of trade that was made yesterday, ironically, with the team that the Jaguars are playing against, the New Orleans Saints. The Saints defensive lineman Kaylin Saunders is going to be a member of the Jaguars. He was probably lined up right across from, I wish I could see the tape, whether or not he was lined up right across from Luke Fortner. Fortner is obviously in his third year. Is it his third or his fourth year? I think it might be. No, it's Luke's fourth year, I believe, here with the Jaguars out of Kentucky. Did not start last year. They went out and they've been trying to replace him or trying to find a replacement. But the thought was that coming into this season, his old offensive coordinator from Kentucky, who happens to be Liam Cohen, who's the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, that maybe that might have saved him a little, but it didn't. And the reason why it didn't, in my opinion, is he's not strong and he's not very good. What does it have to do with Pat Mekari? I'll tell you what it has to do with Pat Mekari. His presence, along with the presence of Jonah Monheim, tells the Jaguars that they could just go ahead and move on in another direction. And Pat Mekari is slated to start at right guard. He can play every single position on that offensive line, and he did for the Baltimore Ravens over the course of his career with them. And I'll pull his splits up. There's one spot he probably didn't play very much. I think the one where he's lined up, this year at right guard, that's the position that he didn't play very much. So, the issue is all right, he played right tackle, he played left tackle, played a little center, played a little left guard. He ain't played that much. No, I think his left guard, he didn't play a whole bunch. I think he played a lot at right guard. But either way, his versatility is super, super important. There's been a lot of talk because even if you look on the Jaguars depth chart, they have him as a co-starter along with Chuma Edoga, who was laying on the field yesterday and got a little bit banged up. But Chuma has also been competing at right tackle. I thought Chuma was going to really, really compete at left guard. They must love Ezra Cleveland a lot more than I do, but they also have a young draft pick in Wyatt Milam. Glad I finally said his name correctly. Wyatt Milam, who is penciled in as the backup left guard on the Jaguars official depth chart on their website, which tells me that at some point, that's where Wyatt Milam's going to play. He played left tackle in college. Some people projected him as a guard or a right tackle. But I think what we've seen so far from Coach Starrett, the offensive line coach, is a real feeling out process of where everyone was going to play. Yesterday, Fred Johnson started the preseason game in New Orleans at right tackle for Anton Harrison, who they were precautionarily holding out. But he's listed as the starting left tackle. I mean, the backup left tackle behind Walker Little, which means he's the swing tackle for this team. That means to tell me that Pat Mekari is going to be a starter at right guard based on his contract. Okay. He has the second highest annual per year contract of any offensive lineman at 12.5. They gave him a 3-year, $37 million deal. Baltimore wanted to re-sign him, but they were also re-signing left tackle Ronnie Stanley in the same offseason. And usually you don't see teams do that in the same offseason where they have to give free agency money, unrestricted free agency money to players, to that amount, to multiple players. So that's why he left. And a lot of people were thinking that maybe it must not have been that good. That's why Baltimore let him go. Yeah, you should see what they got him replaced with this year. And people are going, whoa, that doesn't look so hot. Well, Mekari is very, very good. He's not just a piece for versatility, Swiss Army knife, even though he is all of that. I think he's very, very good, and he's the technician. I just think what you have is a situation where there's competition. There are a lot of my counterparts in the media that were saying don't be surprised if Mekari doesn't start. The only way Patrick Mekari doesn't start is if he's hurt or he's banged up. They didn't pay $12.5 million for him to come and just be a backup that could back up, a Swiss Army knife backup in depth. He's going to play. If he doesn't play, kudos for them to getting somebody who was just as good or better in Chuma Edoga, but then you're going to be looking at him sideways a little bit saying, hey, that's a lot of money to be paying for a backup. Here's what I think happens. I believe James Hainsey, of course, is your starting center. Pat Mekari, with that versatility, his ability to be a technician at all of those positions, playing right guard for this team is a good thing, and I think that's where he's going to be. And I think Chuma Edoga is going to be your versatile interior player. Now, where he goes into the game depends on who gets hurt. If it's a left guard, do they move Mekari over? Don't know if Wyatt Milam is ready. I think if it's a center, the first look you're going to get is for Mekari to go to center, not Jonah Monheim, who's a rookie. Unless the rookie is way, way better or he gets acclimated to the National Football League really, really quickly, I do believe that the first thing that Mekari would do would be to slide over, and then they would put Edoga at right guard. Fred Johnson will be the swing tackle. If two tackles get hurt, I think Fred Johnson goes to left tackle, Mekari goes to right tackle. That's just the way that I see it. So you got right tackle, probably center, as well as right guard. I think that's where he's going to play. And that versatility and competition is a good thing. I'm not going to make a negative thing out of him and Edoga both being mentioned as starters at right guard. I'm just going to tell you that for a team that has struggled to find offensive linemen and have offensive linemen who can move people and to do, it is a bonus and a plus for the Jacksonville Jaguars to have 8 able bodies, guys. We just named the starters and 3 more people, 8 able bodies that they could have available to them on Sunday, and they probably feel like they even have more than that. But the 8 is a good start. 8 is enough to be optimistic and be happy. Luke Fortner, his career here to Jacksonville obviously didn't go the way he wanted to go, and the fact that his old offensive coordinator and Liam Cohen is here couldn't save him. I'll tell you why in just a second as we get more into what they're getting in Kaylin Saunders. Also, we'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything. Cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But how do you know what exactly works for you? With so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help. That's where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all the difference. You get real, personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on something you saw on social media. You know, everybody has these catchwords, narcissist and depression and healing. They all tell you all of those things, but none of them are really, really qualified to give you a diagnosis. And with over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, serving more than 5 million people, and they are qualified to help you get through. So talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Moving and grooving here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen here, a day after the Jaguars had a 17-17 tie in their second preseason game against the New Orleans Saints. The Jaguars make a little bit of a trade, man, a little bit of a trade with those same Saints, probably for two dudes that kind of lined up across from each other. Kaylin Saunders, the defensive tackle, traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars for Luke Fortner. Money on money, it pretty much is the same thing, man. Both guys are not making, an incredible amount of money. I will tell you this, though. Luke Fortner was probably not even going to make the team, in my opinion. I don't think he was going to be a part of the Jacksonville Jaguars this season. And that's just my opinion. I really don't. So James Gladstone, who we'll talk about in segment 3, certainly works his magic, and he gets something that the Jaguars need right now. I'll go over that without giving it away too much. I'll tell you exactly what someone told me that the Jaguars are getting in Kaylin Saunders. But the Luke Fortner era ends, and I'll say this in a nice way. None of this stuff is personal. It's all about football. It couldn't end fast enough for me. You can't be a dude that people says aren't strong, especially when the guy that picked you, Trent Baalke, says you don't get stronger in the NFL. You're either born with it or you're not. And obviously, the technique part of it, or the part of this that could make a team overcome a lack of strength, which is, there are a lot of people that aren't really, really super, super strong, but they make up for it with technique. Luke Fortner, though, it's not enough to overcome his lack of strength, man. You just see him get pushed around. Sometimes you saw guys in Trevor Lawrence's lap with a year off last year, of course, with Mitch Morse being here. You would think, okay, they get a chance, as long as Morse doesn't get hurt, to actually work on some maintenance with him, do a little bit more than maintenance, actually, to try to work on his strength a little bit. Just wasn't enough. And Cohen being here just wasn't enough also. But this is a James Gladstone decision that is probably also in tune with getting more competition, and done in conjunction with the opinions of the offensive line coach, Coach Jarrett, as well as Liam Cohen. Guys are going to come, guys are going to go. Pat, he's gone now. Luke Fortner is gone, and I don't know how big of an impact he's going to make in New Orleans unless he's just a depth piece as a guy who's played a lot of games. It's just some of those things you just can't overcome, man. And to me, he's a turnstile at center, and you can't be putting your quarterback in danger, and your guys can't be getting hit as soon as they touch the ball. But what are the Jaguars getting? All right, Kaylin Saunders. There are a lot of people saying he's going to start in Jacksonville. I saw that, or that he could start. He started a lot of games for the Saints. The last 3 years, he started probably 90% of their snaps. Now, the rest of the story. He ain't very good, according to people that I talk to, but he doesn't have to be here in Jacksonville. What he is something that I've talked ad nauseum about. Do they go out and get an additional veteran, a guy that's a little bit versatile, that provides some stuff for them if the cost isn't high? The cost was not high. And by the cost not being high, it cost them Luke Fortner. So we need to hold our horses a little bit on all of that. He's a nose tackle. So if he does start, it's going to be for Devon Hamilton, who they're paying a bunch of money. Or people have always talked about Ham's versatility. Could he be like Marcel Darius, who was both a nose and a 3 technique, who could do a little bit of both? Or does it change the way they play? Or does this mean that they don't believe Jordan Jefferson is quite ready? Or, is it just strictly a short yardage situation? Don't know. But fun player to watch, about 6 feet tall, about my height, but he built like a soda machine. He's about 330 pounds. So it's added beef. It's a guy that's taking NFL snaps, who, what are you looking for? 20 snaps a game from him here, as opposed to being a starter in New Orleans on a bad team? Sure. I heard he's a really, really great leader. when he's in the mood to be a really good locker room guy, when he's in the mood to be. And I'm telling you, if he's moody and he's 6 feet, 325, 330 pounds, you just probably want to leave him alone. Sounds like Roy Miller. You probably just want to leave him alone until he gives you the okay and gives you the smile that, okay, he's ready to talk now. So I like that. I like the move. I think it's a good addition. It's another veteran that's in the interior of the defensive line that they did not have a whole bunch of guys. They had a bunch of dudes running around the other day that you never seen, and they were flashing, but they couldn't finish plays. So now, with the look at the depth chart a little bit, I see if they've added him or if they're going to wait to bring him in to take his physical. Yeah, they haven't added him yet. It's still Devon Hamilton, Jordan Jefferson, and James Carpenter, who's a rookie. So maybe this moves Carpenter out into the practice squad, and now they go in with Devon Hamilton, Jordan Jefferson, and Kaylin Saunders, because that would give them a little bit of a buffer between a very veteran guy in Saunders, a guy that's right in the middle of his prime in Devon Hamilton, and then a young guy you're still trying to develop or bring along in Jordan Jefferson. So I know a lot of people thought that this is a situation where, okay, he's going to play for Eric Armstead or Mason Smith. And maybe the Jaguars do have some plans to play some sort of combination where you don't really have a straight up three technique, and you just have two big guys in the middle. You can play it that way if you want to. I asked the defensive coordinator that, Mark Duffin, a former coach, I asked, could they pull that off? I asked Dave Campbell. He said, yeah, it'll look different and it'll feel different. You'll probably get less of an interior pass rush and less disruption, but at least this makes you a little bit more stout, and you got it for the dude you wasn't going to pay anyway, dude you were going to cut. So that being said, it's a good thing, good for the Jaguars, but I hold my horses on all of this stuff. I've seen some of my, like I said, some of my counterparts saying you traded a dude. They're giving Gladstone a lot of credit, and they should, but they were framing it like you traded for a dude who could start for you. And I'm telling you, if he starts for you at nose tackle, that is an indictment of Devon Hamilton, unless they're going to move Devon Hamilton over to three technique. You know, it's not interior defensive line. The position you play actually matters. So a lot of you guys listen to a lot of guys or read a lot of guys that do a really, really good job with reporting information. But sometimes it flies over some people's heads that even though it's interior, they actually do have positions. Everybody that plays nose can't play three technique and vice versa. And every defense, they're different from run to pass downs and the personnel that they have. So this is not just saying interior defensive line. Just like wide receiver isn't just saying wide receiver. An ex-wide receiver, you got to play flankers, split in, and be able to play in the slot takes a special person. It's not just like you going out and getting a wide receiver. This isn't fantasy football or interior offensive line. No, left side and right side matters, you know? So with that being said, good move by James Gladstone, who we will discuss here in just a second on segment 3. I think he's doing a good job, and moves like this really make me feel more comfortable that he's going to do a good job. We'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and my crew at Showtime and Playmakers, we're right there on Yahoo Fantasy because that's where we've been for 18 years. We start drafting next week. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give the new mode a try. If you're more into the classics now, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join public leagues. All right, here's what you do. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/locked-on. Moving and grooving here on Locked On Jaguars. I'm going to address something real quick because it's coming up actually while I'm recording this. My man Gator Greg, I appreciate the back and forth. My man Gator Greg brought up and he said, this is why the Jaguars should have traded back with the Bears, let the Bears move up, keep your first round pick in 2026, keep your second round pick, get the Bears second and a first, and then he listed off a number of players the Jags could have drafted. We haven't seen Travis Hunter yet in a real game. Guys like Travis Hunter don't come along very often. Great players, game changers that do things differently. That comes with a price, okay? Unfortunately for the Jaguars, they were 3 draft picks behind where they needed to be, and they made a move up to get a top guy. I always talk about adding players to a team and the tiers of where you can add great talent. Sure, you can draft a dude in the 3rd round and he turns out to be an all-pro. But in the draft, sometimes you have to look at it and say this. There's 4 or 5 different makers. There's 4, and we need 1. And last year's draft, Travis would have been a top 3 pick. This year's draft, he was a top 2 pick. Next year's draft, he would have been a top 3 pick. That means that a guy like that, regardless of the draft, is a special, special talent who still has to prove it, but he hasn't had a chance to do that yet. It's easy to say we should have taken something else when you're not factoring in the fact that this is a mercurial talent, a superfluous individual, and you haven't seen the benefit of having a dynamic player like that yet. Just wait for it, Gator Greg. Hold on. And we're saying that because I'm getting to this thing about James Gladstone. I like the fact that he took those chances to add high-end talent, something that the Jaguars have not had. Yeah, they got Brian Thomas Jr., but go back on offense and really think back. You got to go start talking about Fred Taylor, Maurice Jones-Drew, Jimmy Smith, and Keenan McCardell. All right? It's highly possible that some of those dudes that I just mentioned got grown-ass kids right now. And you can't mention anybody else, maybe Leonard Fournette, who was here for a cup of coffee, but you can't think of anybody else who people thought were amongst or had the ability to be amongst the best that's played their position. This is why James Gladstone has done a good job to me, because he said, draft picks be damned. We're going to go out and get this dude, and we're going to bring him in here. It's going to take you a minute to see the benefits from it, but that's all right. Sometimes you give up being able to be solid all around the board in order to be great at a certain position. The Jaguars also had a boatload of picks. They probably didn't see a big difference between guys that were taken in the 2nd and 4th round, which means we can get our share of guys that we really, really like, as opposed to just hanging on to all of these safe choices. I like the fact that he wasn't safe about it. I really, really do. But I also like the fact that if you are one that believes that James Gladstone took too much of a risk, understand that he also values day 2 and day 3 picks and being able to go out and add guys to your team that specifically fit what you need them to do. So because he's that way, I'm going to give you an analogy. Y'all knew it was coming. Someone who crosses his T's, dots his I's, and is real good at valuing getting the best out of a little bit, right? I would love for that person to take chances also, because even if it doesn't work, they're going to hit on these other players. You just look at the Rams and where he comes from and his pedigree, and I think that we're banking on the fact that he's going to do some of the things that they've done. The Rams traded away a bunch of first-round picks and ended up winning the Super Bowl, and then you would think, okay, but now they got to pay the piper when they start letting those guys go and Aaron Donald retires. Yeah, they're paying the piper, all right. They were right back. They were that close to going back to the NFC Championship game just last year. They rebuilt it all the way with all of those rookies, with all of those dudes on the offensive line that nobody knows, with running backs, and with a wide receiver named Puka Nacua that was chosen in the 3rd round. And he replaced another dude that was chosen in the 2nd or 3rd round in Cooper Kupp because he got banged up. You have to have confidence in your ability to find playmakers that fit what you need them to do, and that can come in here and let loose and unleash their superpower on this organization so they have the same impact as some of the guys you could have got that you traded away. I don't want someone who can't draft very well on day 2 and day 3. Y'all know exactly who I'm talking about. who has to make big splashes and depend on it, because now everything that you do depends on you paying a bunch of money for something. Because to me, that means you're not good at what you do. You're just good at being able to get around what you do. And unfortunately in football, just like the players on the field, you can't work your way around not being able to find bargains on day 2 and day 3. So for that reason, I'm giving James Gladstone an attaboy for this one and for the move that he made. You turned a player that you were probably going to cut, that probably was never going to play significant snaps here for the Jaguars, into a veteran who has played a lot, who, while he might not be great, can give you a little bit of security that at least you have a professional on the field that understands situational football. And that is going to, at the very least, give you a stalemate and give you the depth that you need in order to be able to, you don't have to work around him being in there. He ain't going to win the game for you, but what he will do is he will allow the players that you have designated as the players that can win games for you. He will allow you to let them make their plays while he at least gives you a stalemate at his position. And I think that's what this is all about. They didn't have to go out and just be out here butt naked in the street trying to twerk and sign somebody and beg them to come out of retirement. No, they traded for a dude who already has tweeted Duval, and he's happy to be here because he knows the New Orleans Saints ain't going to be very good this year. And they probably have a specific role for him and know exactly how they're going to use him and see if he can fit into the culture of this football team. Now, I know linemen don't play fantasy football, at least offensive linemen and nose guards don't, but I will tell you this. What they will do is this: provide you with a foundation that will allow you to build your fantasy teams based on what you think their impact is going to be. And there's no better place for you to go than Locked On Fantasy Football, man. Let me tell you something. My man Vinny Iyer is the cold hard truth. We know Locked On Fantasy Football is Vinny Iyer, and Michelle Majuk is right there with him, and they give you all the things you need to know to help your fantasy football teams this year. Of course, you're going to do that on Yahoo. I already know that. So make sure you listen to Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to help you with your fantasy drafts this coming off season. Appreciate you guys spending 27 minutes with us today. Listen to the postcast if you want to know how I felt about the Jaguars game against the Saints. Joint practices with Miami, of course, short week, last preseason game. Maybe 3 or 4 jobs are still on the line. Maybe they aren't. We'll see. Might have a special guest for y'all this week. We'll make sure we get to that when we get to it. I'll let you know the day that it happens, all right? We don't do guests very often because everybody comes on here to see me, but sometimes a special guest is really, really good. We'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.